Greetings. This is episode -1 of my engineering Oddcast. Cue intro. In this episode, we'll cover who I am, what's going to be in this series, and why I felt that I should make it. My name's Phil Willoughby. I'm a very senior software engineer and towards the tail end of my career at this point. This series is about software engineering. How it will cover topics such as how to perform your best in a software engineering interview, how it is that I think about problems and things that have served me well over the course of my career in solving things. As this is hosted on YouTube, there's the opportunity for you to ask questions or suggest topics that I should cover in the comments section below any video. I will endeavour to look at them. If the question or topic is interesting and I feel that I can contribute, then I'll do an episode about it. There are some topics that are going to be permanently off limits on this Oddcast. So because I work at a hedge fund, Citadel, I'm not permitted to give market views, company outlooks, that kind of thing for any company or for any technology that's so closely associated with some company or industry that you could construe it as a recommendation on what you should invest in or a hint as to what Citadel's invested in. I'm making this series because when I was a junior software engineer, I got a lot of advice and help from more senior software engineers. And honestly, as a senior software engineer, I still get advice and help from other software engineers. When people ask me for help, if I know them or if I work with them, then of course I will endeavour to help them directly. But there's also started to be a population of people who contact me through LinkedIn who I do not know at all and who ask me for advice on getting started in software engineering or how to progress their careers. Reality is I would like to help everyone who needs it, but I don't have the time to do one-to-one video calls or phone calls with each of these people to go through everything. And because these are people who I don't personally know, my advice is going to be generic and basically the same to each of them. And so I thought perhaps I should just record what I would have said in those calls, and then I can point them and any future people who come asking the same questions at this series, establish if there are things that I haven't covered, and then fill those holes. I want to state very clearly, anything I say in these videos is just me saying it. I'm not speaking on behalf of any organisation. I can't speak for my current employer. I don't speak at all for my previous employers. It's also the case that no one else has any control over what I say in these videos. I think it's important with anything you're viewing that you understand where the funding for it's come from. I'm funding the recording of this, the equipment I'm using to record it myself from my paychecks. No one is paying me to make this series. It's not currently my intent ever to add advertisements to this series. If you're seeing adverts because it's on YouTube, that's because YouTube has to make money to pay their bills. I can't do anything about it. I have no control over the content or placement of those adverts at this time. I want to end on a slightly philosophical note. The content of these is rarely going to be, or should ideally never be, me telling you things you should or should not do with no explanation for why. I'm going to aim to give you advice or recommendations that have served me well or that I've seen work well for others in the cases where I've not personally had to exploit that advice very often. But I'm also going to tell you the rationale for why I think that works, why I have found that to be effective wherever possible. Please hold me to that promise. If there's a line in a video where I've asserted something with no evidence, no rationale, no apparent thought behind it, feel free to call me out on that and I will endeavour to correct it. I think that's it for this like background information, what you should expect, what you should not expect type of information. The next episode will be episode 1, which will have the subject of interview tips.